This episode brought to you by Peter Wood's Museum of the Impossible.
What's a Museum of the Impossible? It's gonna be like Harry Potter meets Ripley's Believe It or Not. It'll be a one-of-a-kind, themed, interactive space where people can experience the impossible. But I need your help. To get the project started, I've set up a Patreon over at museumoftheimpossible.com. If you're able to throw a few bucks my way each month, we can build it together. Thanks for your support, and I can't wait to welcome you into the Museum of the Impossible. Welcome to the podcast of the Impossible. I'm Peter Wood, and my guest today has appeared at the Magic Castle, Chicago Magic Lounge, and on Penn and Teller Fool Us, so clearly this podcast is a natural next step in her career. Join me in welcoming Lindsey Noel. How are you, Lindsey?
Hi, great. Thanks so much for having me, Peter. I'm really excited about this. It seemed impossible to get on, but I snuck it in.
Is that an impossible joke? I like it.
No, I would never. I'm a magician. I have too much respect for humor.
That's very kind of you. Although my experience has been those two are not mutually exclusive. But I'm glad to hear it.
No, and actually, all jokes aside, I do love puns. Otherwise, I wouldn't have married Francis.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. No, we need to we need to get into that. And I'm curious is there like a pun jar, like a swear jar at your house, you know? But
no, it's kisses. We give kisses.
Okay. That's great. Well, I want to hear sort of like, let's go back. Let's do the origin story here. Tell me, let's start wherever you think the beginning is.
Well, okay. So it's funny. When I was really young, I definitely loved David Copperfield. Like 6-year-old, 7-year-old Lindsey had a crush on David Copperfield. Like if he was doing a television special, I was like this next to the TV. Touch the screen, do a thing where I touch the screen.
Sure.
But that was when I was really young, and I think like every other magician, I got a magic set. But I wasn't into it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care. So it's funny that you would ask for an origin story, because when I do my short set, so like my castle set, or Mark Clearview has a show called Magic Unlocked, which is also it's not quite like the castle, but it's a 15-minute set, and you do it a few times for a few different groups.
Okay.
And the opening to that short set of mine is that every magician has an origin story. And most magicians' origin stories kind of sound like, when I was 5, my parents bought me a magic set, and I never looked back.
Right.
But my origin story is obviously a little different. You see, when I was 30, I banged a magician.
Okay.
And now I do magic. It's great. I love it. That's the short joke version. Joke version.
Freudian slip. I love it. These are sort of vampire rules, right? Like you get bitten by a vampire, you become a vampire, you know?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And which is why at the end of the set, my final line, because I think this is important if you're going to mess around with vampires or magicians or jugglers, if you're going to bang one, make sure they're good.
Okay.
What they do, because otherwise the transitive properties aren't going to serve you very well.
I see. Okay. This is good advice. This is why people tune into this pod. Yeah.
We're getting right to the nitty gritty. Don't have sex with bad magicians. If anyone takes anything away from this episode, please don't do that.
That's fair. And I think that's good for everyone, because that gives bad magicians motivation to get better.
Yes.
And that also is just good, life advice. So I appreciate
exactly.
If you get bitten by the last zombie in the herd, you're doing a bad, like that guy was so slow,
You're so slow. A slow zombie caught you. That's
right.
Like a new kind of insult.
Right. That's great.
But yeah, so all jokes aside, I had an interest in magic when I was really young, but obviously it didn't stick. And I met Francis Minotti, for those that don't know. He's my husband. He's great. He's a really fantastic magician and creator. And I hadn't been interested in magic in years. And I was 28 years old. It was the summer of 2014. And we were both doing a show that neither of us wanted to do. And I hadn't seen magic that excited me in probably 25 years.
Mm.
And maybe 20 years. And my friend and I watched Francis, and he did his exquisitely unshuffled, exquisitely shuffled, which is his mixed up deck, mixed up words piece.
Right.
And he also did his Scrabble piece, the piece that fooled Penn and Teller, because he hadn't gone on at this point. He was rehearsing it. So he was doing the show because any opportunity that came up for him to perform in front of a live audience to practice this piece, he was going to take on national television. He was taking. For me, I lived 2 blocks away and somebody had called out. So they texted me and were like, can you do this? And I was like, yeah, whatever. I don't care. I literally will wheel my suitcase around the corner and come do this weird show. I wasn't doing magic at the time. I was doing cabaret performance stuff, like dancing and things like that.
Okay.
And we saw Francis, my friend and I, and we were like, this guy's amazing. Holy crap. How do we make him hang out with us all the time and do our shows for like way less money than he definitely usually gets paid?
Sure.
And we got him. We got him right in there. And we put him in, we made him a costume, we made him a Gambit costume. And we put him in I used to produce a show called Comic Strip that was like a comic book themed burlesque show when Comic-Con was in town.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And we had him do a Gambit routine. And then that was the start. But I didn't start doing magic right away. The first magic piece I created was a duet with him as Rogue in Gambit, where I stole his powers. So that was the first thing I had to learn magic for, was levitating a little card so that it could be like, I got him to touch me and then I stole his powers.
Oh, nice.
And then we started working on shows together, like writing these scripted shows. So we would do slightly magical things in the shows. Like we did a scripted John Waters show. It was like an alternative universe where in the reality of the John Waters universe, Divine had actually died from an internal staph infection from eating dog poop.
Okay.
And so Connie and Raymond Marble needed to make sure that they became a trifecta of filth.
Okay.
And so they were holding auditions. For those that don't know, I'm naming characters out of the 1971 John Waters movie Pink Flamingos.
Right.
Which Francis also didn't know anything about, but like was a very good sport and just went along with doing this. He
nice.
played David Lockery as Raymond Marble. He was perfect. Looks weirdly good in a strange mustache and a blue wig.
Awesome.
But yeah, so we made up this whole show and we did a quick change routine. If you've not seen Pink Flamingos, at the time, well, I guess now too, there was like a lot of moral panic over queerness and transness and all of that. And so there's a scene in the movie where Connie and Raymond are like being sexy, but in a John Waters movie, being sexy is never sexy.
Right.
So they're just wearing each other's underwear.
Okay.
Like Connie has on male underwear and Raymond has on her underwear, right? So we made that into a magic routine where we did a quick change thing, pull a curtain up, and our underwear switches magically.
Okay. How I'm scared to ask this, but how is the audience see that? Like, are you down to your skivvies, or is it an external thing?
No, it was down to, and skivvies being like, again, that 70s version. So like
Sure.
I had on a tank top and like high waist tighty whities.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Male underwear, and Francis had on like large grandma panties and like a large bra.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
But yeah, then the audience received it well because we were at the time, this was 2016.
Okay.
2016. And I was definitely known for leaning in and going very hard on a theme.
Okay.
So like the people that were showing up to this John Waters show loved John Waters.
Right.
Like it was giving the people what they wanted.
Sure.
The whole like any rabid John Waters fan in Philadelphia basically was there.
Okay. Sure.
At some point during the run. So yeah,
Nice.
I would say a lot of the stuff I did in that time was less sexy and more weird and like, wow, you really did that.
Well, and do you think, I'm curious, Penn Jillette has talked about this, where sometimes you do it for the audience in the moment, and sometimes you do it because you want to tell the story that you did this thing one time. So like how much, I'm sure for the John Waters fans, they were totally digging it in the moment, but like, How much has that sort of lived on in sort of legend of you, or was it just sort of a thing you did and then moving on?
Oh, I mean, well, that's the interesting thing about being coming from the cabaret and burlesque world, right?
Uh-huh.
So much of it is only an oral history,
Oh, sure.
you know?
Right.
So, in a way, anything you're doing is you're doing for the legend of it.
Right. That's
Because you're
interesting.
only ever going to get told by someone talking like, oh my God, one time I went to I mean, and I definitely did weird things. We did a Werner Herzog show.
Okay.
The Werner Herzog show was pretty amazing. That's one that people tend to still talk about.
Okay.
The Wes Anderson show was pretty wild and weird.
Nice.
Our Back to the Future show, we actually did on Back to the Future Day, October 21st, 2015.
Yeah. Okay.
We did a show. Actually, John Reed brought his DeLorean for it for people to take pictures.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And we did it at the Trocadero. And all of our flyers were, instead of Save the Clock Tower, Save the Trocadero.
Okay. Brilliant.
So yeah, I mean, I did a lot of stuff to try to be, I guess in a way, it's for the legend. I still talk about the stuff I did. I'm proud of a lot of the weird stuff I put on, and because it all took a ton of work.
Sure.
And the thing about that world that's weird is not only is it a lot of word of mouth, but you tend to put a lot of work into a thing you're only going to do one or two times.
Right.
Which is so different than magic.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, wow, don't miss that part. I don't miss that part of that performance era. For myself, I love the part of magic where when I create a magic routine or a magic set, I get to do it countless times. I'm so much better now as a performer.
Yep. Yeah. Sure. No, that's
because of that, right?
I think Michael Goudot says that, like, you know, a true performer watches Groundhog Day and says that looks awesome. Like the fact that I can relive that same 24-hour hunk and make it perfect. You know, like we've got our set on stage, and like a big change for me will be a one word difference, you know, and that makes all the difference the next night, you know. It's
incredible watching him work. We did Marvin's Magic Theater with him at the end of January in 2020.
Okay.
So, you know, like one of the last things we did before not anywhere to do anything.
Right.
And God, that man is incredible.
Yeah.
Because, you know, so I hadn't seen him before working with him at this show.
Oh, okay.
And I saw his set the first night and I was like, wow, that was amazing. Oh, I thought he messed up. Like there were so many moments of like, oh, he messed that up. Oh, no, he didn't. Oh my God, he did. And then I saw the set again and I was like,
yep.
It's exactly the same.
Sure. Yeah.
Every pause, every moment, everything that seems like it naturally occurred with someone in the audience, 100% planned.
Yeah.
Brilliant. That man is so good.
Yep. No, I mean, in theater, you talk about the illusion of the first time, but like, I swear in the variety arts, it's even more defined and pronounced, you know, because it's not.
It has to be.
Yeah.
Because if it feels, I think one of the things about arts like magic, juggling, any like circus art is feeling like you're experiencing something for the first time with everybody else, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And if you sound like you've scripted this thing, it's lost half of its appeal right out the bat.
Right. Agreed. Yeah. Well, so tell me, you were in burlesque, but how did that sort of come about? Like, I know you have a background in film and theater stuff. Like, what was the path to doing those shows?
So this is funny. People always say, "Oh, you have a background in theater." I don't. I was not in theater. I don't know where this came from because Todd Robbins actually introduced me and talked about how I come from the theater and stuff, and I was like, "It's not." You know, it sounds good, so like we'll leave it there.
Sure. I'm not going to argue with him.
It was for a television show thing, so it wasn't like being kept or whatever. But I worked in film, basically starting in high school.
Okay.
I really wanted to be a filmmaker, and I wanted to go to film school, and my mom would not let me.
Okay.
She was like, "You need to get a useful degree."
Right.
So now I have an English literature degree.
serves you well every day because you read and speak English. So I think
I do.
I
And
think you're good.
I write great emails, and actually, I do believe it helps me as far as in film, especially. It helped with getting jobs because I was a costume designer and stylist, so I could email somebody and talk about their script and talk about the importance of building character and symbolism with textures and colors and levels of distress and reading between the lines to really put a visual story onto each actor.
Right. Okay.
Which was impressive because most costume designers, I think, come from the fashion school world, right?
Right.
Or
right.
at least like theater world. It's not a ton of English majors that are costume designers.
Right. Sure.
So that helped a lot. And I think it helps in doing the cabaret and burlesque stuff as well. Just being able to like approach from a different angle.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, sorry, I got a little off topic. Your question was, how did that bring me to magic?
Yeah. Well, and also, I mean, or, no, just getting into burlesque, like, are we talking about in the Philly area, or was this somewhere else that you were working in both film and then getting into burlesque?
I lived in New Jersey right before I started.
Okay.
And I moved into Philadelphia. I was still in college. I was 22.
Okay.
And the way that I learned was I discovered it in general, was that there's something called Something Weird.
Okay.
It's run by Frank Henenlotter, who made Basket Case and Frankenhooker.
Okay.
Classic. Actually, I do love Frankenhooker. It's a great movie.
I've heard of it. I have not seen it, but at least it's on my radar. So
it's wonderful.
Okay. Okay.
But in the really good bad way.
Yeah. Nice.
And so Frank Henenlotter has this vault of old film, and there was, for a time on Comcast, there was an on-demand section called Something Weird, and it had school scare films and weird corporate movies and like strange ephemera from like the 40s to 70s, essentially, that was recorded on film.
Okay.
And one of the sections was vintage striptease.
Okay.
And so I was watching all of these classic videos of like Tempest Storm and Betty Page, and that was how I learned how to do burlesque.
Gotcha. Wow, that's so cool.
It was also how I figured out how to make the costumes. So I was watching these videos and pausing them and like trying to figure out how I would create that. And this was before I really sewed.
Right.
So I still have my first costumes, and if you look at them on the inside, you're like, "Ooh, that's rough."
literally.
Yes, very.
Yeah.
But so that was kind of the getting into it, and then I auditioned for a television show and got asked to join a troupe, and then just stayed with it for 10 years because I really loved performing.
Yeah.
It was in a couple within like by about year 4, I started hosting stuff.
Okay.
Year 4 or 5, I started being an MC, which is still something I love to do. Not for burlesque, but for magic. I love emceeing.
Yeah.
I think it's a really important job that often gets overlooked and not given the attention it deserves. And not in the way that I think the MC should be the most important part of the show. It's quite the opposite. A really good MC is simultaneously invisible and amazing.
Right. Talk about why you think like you're sort of the glue, the mortar that holds everything together. So how do you sort of find that balance?
The balance is you don't talk about yourself unless you have to.
Okay.
Right? Like you can tell people your name, but you don't. That show is not about you.
Sure.
You have been brought there to tie the show together, to seamlessly bring us from one act to the next without us feeling like everything stopped when you have to talk about something that's not your thing.
Sure. Okay.
So I think one of the jobs that MCs let fall by the wayside is, because in magic, a lot of times the MC will have to do an act, right?
Right.
And a lot of focus gets put onto what that act is and what they're doing. And, they're really worried about that part being good. But then the other part that doesn't get as much attention, that definitely needs it, is learning the information about the acts you're talking about.
Right. Right.
Right? You see so many times at magic conventions where someone will be like, here's my shtick. Here's the thing I do all the time. Look how natural and funny I am. And this next performer coming up is from and they will be, okay, welcome to the stage. I said their name wrong.
Sure.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
In the 7 years I've been in magic, I have seen that happen multiple times.
Oh, sure. It is. And that's funny. Yeah, that is totally an ego thing. And I had never thought about that before. Like that MC is worried about their connection to the audience, but not about introducing the audience to the next performer, which is their whole job.
That's their whole job.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's their whole job. I always tell people when they hire me to MC, like, I'll do an act if you want. I'll have multiple things ready to go if we need to kill time.
Yeah.
But also if I don't get to do a piece or two, that's okay.
Yep.
I am there to be flexible, but know my stuff.
Right. Yep.
And so many people don't do that well. It's a weird thing. So whenever someone's like I don't often hear people in magic say they love emceeing. The people I've heard say that, well, one of them's no longer around, but Max Maven loved it. And when I spoke to him about this, I guess it was a little over a year ago. And it was awesome. We had a really great lunch, talked a lot about wrestling and a lot about emceeing stuff.
Okay. Yeah.
And so when we were talking about it, it's really that he's one of the people that loved doing it and also came to it about if I've been hired to do this, you're not hiring me to be the star of your show.
Right.
You're hiring me to make sure you have a good show.
Yeah. And I think that's a hard, we are not used to being in the insurance sales business, but that is totally what you're doing as an MC. Like you're letting, especially if it's a corporate event, they're hiring you to make sure that if something does go wrong behind the scenes, it does not have a domino effect and make the whole production fall apart, because you're a pro and you've got backup plans and material and whatever. But yeah, it's a hard when what we're used to selling is entertainment as our standalone show. But selling the idea that if you'll be happy I'm there if something goes wrong is a tough thing for some clients to sort of wrap their head around, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I don't tend to sell it that way. I just say, hey, listen, I'm here to make everything go as smoothly as possible.
Sure.
So here's the information I need to do that. And then on top of asking for that information, now here's what I'm going to do. And I will, when I get hired to MC, I also reach out to each performer that I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
And I don't just ask for their bio. I also I don't personally, when I'm hosting, I don't read bios. I will not read your bio.
Okay.
But what I will do is you can tell me 2 things that are very important for me to mention about you. 3 sometimes if there's 3 things you're just too important for 2. You need 3 different things.
Right.
That's case fine. But I will ask for that and then put it in my words. Because also going back to that whole having to feel like everything's the first time.
Right.
I don't want to sound like I've memorized your bio from your website. I want to sound like I'm genuinely excited to see you.
Right.
So that also I am then informing the audience they should be genuinely excited. And not that I just have to tell you. It's not that I've been hired to tell you about this person. I want to tell you about this person.
Right.
I am excited to share this moment with you. So you should be excited to witness this moment with me.
That's a great distinction. Yeah. No, I am excited that you are here. Is this a transition? And here are the 2 things that I want to make sure people know about you. Your social media and your website. We will definitely do another episode in the future. So this has been delightful. But yeah, if there are 2 things that I want people to remember beyond just advice about, hooking up with magicians and werewolves and zombies. So on socials, certainly on Instagram, your handle is Lindsey with an E, right? Lindsey Noel,
yes.
Magic, and Noel, Noel, like Christmas.
Like Christmas.
Yep.
Noel.
So Lindsey Noel Magic, and then Lindsey Noel _ on Twitter. Then that's not the second thing. That's 1B. The second thing, LindseyNoelMagic.com is the best way for folks to find out all about your upcoming public shows and if they want to reach out to you for an event and all of your adventures there.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
And you'll always know you can go there to see the whatever Magic Above Standard show is happening that month.
Yes. Yeah. I want to talk about that for sure on a future episode, because I have lots of questions. But hey, thank you again so much for making the time today. And that is going to do it for this episode of the Podcast of the Impossible. But for behind the scenes access to my Museum of the Impossible project, as well as info about my public shows and private events, social media, and more, you can head on over to peterwood.com. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye.